So welcome this evening, and welcome very much to our friends on Zoom as well. And this evening we're continuing our exploration of the Ariyapariyesana Sutta, the Noble Quest. And that takes us into the title of the section of the Sutta, which is Enlightenment, which in our discussions on Sangha night we often refer to as awakening as well. So I'm going to be talking about this for a while. We're then going to have a period of led reflection, then the tea break, then meditation. So if you like to sit in a position that suits you more comfortably for listening, then do that. Just make yourself comfortable. I have to say, I've had a day of spiritual inspiration and technological breakdown. I'm also very happy that it's not the other way around. Not unusual, neither of those are unusual experiences for me, I have to say. So in the sutta, in the Ariyapariyesana Sutta, the Buddha, we've got to a point where the Buddha has already described the ignoble path. The path where living in the sufferings of experience, of old age, sickness, death, sorrow, the classic mistake, which as human beings we tend to make, is to keep seeking things within that range of experience. So in actual fact, we go through suffering, we go through disappointment again and again. And the alternative is to follow the noble path, the path of the Buddha's teaching, the path that will take us to the full experience of enlightenment, of awakening, and that is for the benefit of all beings. So, in a way, this is the absolutely crucial human situation. I'm just going to read to you the relevant extracts from the sutta. The Buddha speaks quite simply and directly, and also what he says as he talks about the noble path is wonderful as well. It's not ornamented, it's not obviously poetic, it is the truth. However, I'll begin by reminding you of the description of how he himself knows that in his past he experienced the pull of the ignoble path, the ignoble quest. Before my enlightenment, while I was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, I too, being myself subject to birth, sought what was also subject to birth. Being myself subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement, I sought what was also subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement. Then I considered thus, why, being myself subject to birth, do I seek what is also subject to birth? Why, being myself subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement, do I seek what is also subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement? And then I'll move on now to where he speaks about the alternative, and this is where we're now under the heading of enlightenment. And we'll begin, however, with him taking his place under the Bodhi tree. Just slightly adjust what I just said, taking his place under the Bodhi tree where he will achieve enlightenment, and then we hear about the consequences of that. Still in search of what is wholesome, seeking the supreme state of sublime peace, I wandered by stages through the Magadhan country until eventually I arrived at Senananigam, near Uruvela. There I saw an agreeable piece of ground, a delightful grove with a clear flowing river with pleasant smooth banks, and nearby a village for alms resort. I considered, This is an agreeable piece of ground. This is a delightful grove with a clear flowing river with pleasant smooth banks, and nearby a village for alms resort. This will serve for the striving of a clansman intent on striving. And I sat down there thinking, this will serve for striving. Enlightenment. Then, being myself subject to birth, having understood the danger in what is subject to birth, seeking the unborn supreme security from bondage, nibbana, I attain the unborn supreme security from bondage, nibbana. Being myself subject to aging, having understood the danger in what is subject to aging, seeking the unaging supreme security from bondage, nibbana, I attain the unaging supreme security from bondage, nibbana. Being myself subject to sickness, having understood the danger in what is subject to sickness, seeking the unailing security from bondage, nibbana, I attain the unailing supreme security from bondage, nibbana. Being myself subject to death, seeking the deathless supreme security from bondage, nibbana, I attain the deathless supreme security from bondage, nibbana. Being myself subject to sorrow, having understood the danger in what is subject to sorrow, seeking the sorrowless supreme security from bondage, nibbana, I attained the sorrowless supreme security from bondage, nibbana. Being myself subject to defilement, having understood the danger in what is subject to defilement, seeking the undefiled supreme security from bondage, nibbana, I attain the undefiled supreme security from bondage, nibbana. The knowledge and vision arose in me. My deliverance is unshakable. This is my last birth. Now there is no renewal of being. And because the Buddha attained enlightenment, we too can also attain enlightenment. So crucial for him, crucial for us, and crucial for the world. And I was thinking the Buddha's life story is actually therefore supremely important for us. It is the greatest autobiography. And it's his presence speaking, and he is the enlightened being, radiant, the Dharma shining within him, the impact that he had on those who were immediately around him. So my focus this evening, our focus this evening, is the noble quest, the path which he opened up for all of us, and also enlightenment. And Vajrapriya described this on his introductory evening as what gives life meaning in the face of death. And I will say things, general things about the noble quest, but in a way that is all our practices. I'm not going to go into detail tonight. It is what we do. It is what we are following here. It is the spirit of Sanganite. So I'll say something in general terms, and then I want to say something about the momentum within it, the momentum towards spiritual progress, hopefully the momentum to a deepening so that enlightenment becomes possible, becomes truly possible, realistic for us. So what we were turning towards, what's touching what is deepest within us, unfolding for us. Enlightenment, awakening, nirvana, the beyond. And then I did my best to talk about enlightenment because there it is. Well, I think we just have to be more evocative in a way. And we're going beyond our conventional understanding and our conventional approaches to how the world works and what life is like. and some of it is beyond words. So, but to set the scene, so I'm going to say something about enlightenment before I go into talking about the quest, just as an introduction. So enlightenment is a state of perfect wisdom and perfect compassion. There's two qualities informing each other. And it is thus also a state of supreme devotion, balanced energy, ethical purity, an experience of utter freedom and of a beauty which is currently beyond our knowing. And all of this arises from having no fixed, narrow sense of self, but instead to be experiencing a flow of being and a deep connection as the nature of what we are. And so this experience, well, manifests in lots of ways, and I'll come on to those in ways that speak to us, and there's also the experience of sunyata, the emptiness of the heart sutra. That is the state of consciousness of the enlightened being. And from that, well, that is wisdom. And from that, compassion, that deep connectedness naturally flows. Nothing fixed or specific. And though we call it emptiness, we could as easily call it fullness. So this is the fullness of life, not fixed, narrow, bounded, transitory in that sense, but of flow and connection and vitality. And all of this is experienced by enlightened being as the bodhicitta, the awakened mind and heart flowing into compassion for all beings. So the noble quest, I was just going to ask you what your associations are for the word noble. And where noble goes into other words like nobility and nobleman, and they have various social hierarchical associations, but that doesn't really transfer to the word noble as an adjective. So if we talk about the noble path, the noble quest, the noble being, what might be the associations you would have for noble?
The word I use is fine.
Sort of fine, refined, yeah.
Pure beauty, clarity, without defilement, pure, omniscient. And it's just a short word that kind of fine.
Oh yes, thank you.
Yeah. Something good, wholesome about it.
Yes.
Worthy?
Yes, yes, deeply worthy. Yes.
I tend to think about the image of noble bearing, so sort of uprightness.
Yes, yes,
kind
it would
of integrity.
Yes,
yeah.
Would inform our being.
Yeah.
Anything? We've had quite a good list already, but anything else? What about quest? We don't use the word quest very often. What would quest suggest to you?
A sense of striving.
Striving, as the Buddha talked about striving, didn't he, in the passage I read?
I mean, it's something about magic and a jewel at the end of it. It's something that's it's not just a journey. It's more special. It's very, very treasured.
Yeah, has sort of mythic associations, doesn't it? Quest, yeah.
It implies a lot of effort, and then the journey might change you somehow. So
yes,
you won't be able to return to the person you were at the start.
Yes, good, thank you.
Shradaba has a hand up on Zoom.
Oh, sorry, I haven't picked up the phone.
It may be a thumbs up.
She's got a hand as well.
Shradaba, are you wishing to speak, or was it?
No, it was a thumbs up.
Right.
It was an agreement with what you were saying.
We've got a thumbs up to the noble quest, so you know. We're okay now. Thank you very, very much. Okay. And of course, it's about going beyond the narrow, fixed sense of self to our full potential, if we wish to take that choice, if we wish to follow that path. And Abhante, I think, has given us a very good vision when he talked originally about the system of practice, introduced that to us, and often we call it the mandala of practice, that to follow this path, we draw on the full range of our spiritual experience and our spiritual potential. So on integration, positive emotion, and then the recognition of spiritual death, the death of the self, spiritual rebirth, and then a state of receptivity from which compassion for all beings naturally flows. And then that will encompass, all our main practices, metta, mindfulness, ritual, study, reflection, and so on. Yeah. So something which really thinks a gathering together of all of ourselves, body, speech, mind, to follow. We're packing up well, actually. We're taking everything with us on this quest and so on. And so it's a breadth to his vision there. And we're aspiring to the transcendental. That's what we're moving towards, to the light, to the beauty. And of course, it will have ups and downs, failings, making a mess of things, disappointment. And that may well have been the experience of the Buddha before enlightenment. And it has been the experience of many who did achieve enlightenment as well. And the Buddha was always open to people's potential. Even Angulimala, the murderer who collected dead fingers and made them into a necklace, even he was welcomed by the Buddha. The Buddha would say, come, 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 see, come, Angulimala. Or Kisigotami, the mother who was, distraught to virtual madness by the death of her child. And again, the Buddha would say, come, come, Kisigotami, come, see. It's a path which is open to everyone. So we don't need to feel dispirited, because almost the value of the path is that we meet our humanity in that kind of way as well, and take all of us with us in this path becoming increasingly noble. And also, I think we're doing well. I think we are already at least a bit noble, and becoming more noble as well. So the word quest, I think, holds a sense that there's a momentum here. And enlightenment can, of course, feel a long way away. We can feel, oh, it's not for us, it's not for me. And, well, there's perspectives on this. It may well be the work of lifetimes. We do as much as we can now, because actually in this life we have met the Dharma. Each of us has met the Dharma. And in generally pretty positive, conducive conditions, not all easy for practice, but still offering us so much. So in this lifetime, we have this. So I think, I feel it myself, before I die, I just want to try and keep building up a momentum in my being, so that it will be there in the next life, and I will recognize what the things I'd wish to recognize, a Buddha Rupa, people who I feel that I've known before, a place that I know that I've deeply practiced in before. So we're taking our practice deep into the momentum of what we are. And also, it's much easier, I think, to consider all this in terms of stream entry. Stream entry means that you have reached a point of spiritual progress where you will not turn back. You've entered the stream and you're in the forward momentum of the flow of it. So it's irreversible, but not there yet. And traditionally, it was often said it would take up to 7 lifetimes. But that sense that, oh yes, we can do this. We can get to a point in this life where we won't turn back. And you could say that enlightenment is guaranteed. And we talk a lot in terms of the path of progress and quest gives that sense of a journey, and that's true, that's very true. But also sometimes something happens which feels different from that, something unfolds. Sometimes I might be in an unexpected, significant moment when something does just happen, maybe an experience of beauty, of significance, maybe even in the seemingly ordinary, just there, just as it is. Because in some ways you could say enlightenment is also very, very close. It's not a remote world that we go to. It's a realization of our potential and the potential in the nature of experience. And this momentum is grounded in faith. So our mind says yes to the Buddha's enlightenment. Our mind and our heart say yes to the Dharma. And they say yes to the sense of a spiritual community. So our mind has thought carefully and accepts and believes in the truth of what is being suggested. Maybe been questioning, curious, and our heart is engaged, moved, touched, involved, maybe tender, less restless, more settled, even serene. We have a sense of where we are going. And there can be a longing to move towards the three jewels. I think longing is a lovely word in this sense. It's not like longing for a bar of chocolate. It's something that rises to something deep within us. Ah, yes, this is the path that I wish to follow. This is where I wish to be. And I think it arises from some kind of inner recognition or knowing that is deep within us, a resonance with what we are hearing. There's a quotation that keeps arising in my mind, and it's the last word of a passage of, I think, a sutra, and I can't remember, don't know actually which passage it is, but I think it's probably familiar, quite familiar to quite a few people, but there's a passage which develops into a sentence which ends in the word enlightenment, and then the very last sentence, it is enlightenment that my heart longs for. It is enlightenment that my heart longs for. It's a beautiful line. And at the centre of our mandala, there's the traditional phrase, we are going for refuge. We're going for refuge to the three jewels, even as we chanted a few minutes ago. And we can take this to higher and higher levels, and then to the very highest. It's worth thinking that down the centuries, noble beings of the past, who may also have struggled in their lives, have felt this kind of faith and longing and dedication, and could say it is enlightenment that my heart longs for, or say to the Buddha, for refuge I go, to the Dharma, for refuge I go, to the Sangha, for refuge I go. So we're in a lineage, we're in a tradition. And the Buddha, well, he described the Dharma as the nature of a personal invitation. So that's coming back to the come, see. It's still an invitation for us. Come, welcome, try it out, see. It is possible for you. So I now want to go on to evoke, well, our sense of enlightenment and of the transcendental as well as I can. So to remind you what I said about enlightenment earlier, it's a state of perfect wisdom and perfect compassion, thus supreme devotion, balanced energy, ethical purity, an experience of utter freedom and of a supreme beauty as yet beyond our knowing. There's no fixed sense of self, just a flow of being and a deep connectedness. Experience is therefore shunyata. It's the emptiness of the Heart Sutra. Nothing fixed or specific, just the fullness of life, flow and interconnection. All this is experienced by the enlightened being as the bodhicitta, the awakened mind and heart flowing into compassion for all beings. So, in our spiritual quest, we feel in relationship with various transcendental figures and their enlightened qualities, figures with beautiful names. For example, Avalokiteshvara, Manjughosha, Vajrasattva, Amitabha, Padmasambhava, Green Tara, and many others. And this is, well, a manifestation of the enlightened consciousness and of the Dharmakaya, the ultimate nature of reality manifesting in a way that communicates to us. Quite complex to explain, but we know the feeling, we know what happens. We meet the sense of these figures. And they are beings of light and colour, maybe holding sacred objects, shimmering, translucent, elusive, arising and fading away, and utterly beautiful. And we can aspire to this in beautiful ways, noble ways, on our noble quest. So reciting sacred verses, as we have already done this evening, chanting mantras, honouring our devotional objects, the shrine, the images, the rupa, the vajra, making offerings, being devotional, sharing the sevenfold puja, which takes us through the stages of the journey to enlightenment. And we say those words. And we do this collectively with others, our spiritual friends, who are also following the noble quest. And in all of this, it is as if the enlightened mind is inviting us, and we are responding and experiencing the higher realms of the noble quest and moving forward. So I'd like to just end with a couple of readings, just to hold this. So this is the work that quite a few of you will know, the Bodhicharyavatara by Shantideva. Shantideva is a good example of somebody who seemed not to be at all spiritually developed, and then manifested his whole spiritual vision and the development of his mind, presumably towards an enlightened being. So he wasn't just lazy, a bit stupid and idle, sleeping a lot and defecating. He had a very different kind of life when he chose to speak and to communicate that. So very, very different from those terms in which other people, other monks in his monastery were defining him. So here is his vision arising also from his sense of unworthiness, which we could all say, how can it be that this has happened in me? And even, up to now, one can say, how can it be that this has happened to me? Today my birth is fruitful. My human life is justified. Today I am born into the family of the Buddha. Now I am the Buddha's son. So that there may be no blemish upon this spotless family, I must now act as becomes my family. As a blind man might find a jewel in heaps of rubbish, so too this awakening mind has somehow appeared in me. This is the elixir of life, born to end death in the world. This is the inconceivable treasure, alleviating poverty in the world. This is the supreme medicine, curing the sickness of the world. A tree of shelter for weary creatures staggering along the road of existence. The causeway to cross over bad rebirths, open to all who travel. It is the rising moon of the mind, mitigating the defilements of the world. It is the brilliant sun, dispelling the mist of ignorance from the world. It is the fresh butter risen up from churning the milk of the true Dharma. For the caravan of humanity, traveling the road of existence, hungry for the enjoyment of happiness. This is a feast of happiness, offered as refreshment to all beings who approach. Today I summon the world to Buddhahood and to worldly happiness meanwhile. In the presence of all the saviors, may gods, titans, and all rejoice. So that is, well, the expansive vision of the Mahayana, returning to poetry, to imagery, to evoke what is beyond our normal experience, our ordinary experience. And this, I'd like also just to add quite a short poem by Bhante, which dwells more with that sense of emptiness. But the poem is called Aspiration, so it's about that level of longing, of faith, of the inner knowing, personal. The dim sun sinks to rest in a west of watery gold. The young stars climb the sky, and there like flowers unfold. In the forest vast of night, petals of purest light. So may my heart unfold when the suns of the world have set. In the forest vast of the void, wisdom with mercy met. In that tranquil, silent hour, like a flower and the scent of a flower.